Good morning. It's good to be with you. It's good to see you here and at home. When I'm preaching a certain week, I listen more. I'm aware more of what is going on around me. Imagine if you were asked to speak for 15 minutes at the next family event. You would think about that, right? What would I say? So you're open. You're hoping for inspiration. So I was working on Thursday morning is when I write my draft. And I looked at my email before I started working on the sermon to make sure there wasn't anything urgent. It seems like that's how I look at my email every day. What's most immediate? And I happened to see an article there from the National Catholic Reporter, an independent Roman Catholic publication that's fairly progressive for the Roman Catholic Church. There was an article there, and I noticed it because the author, the priest's name, was the same name as a friend of mine, a bike buddy. And so I thought it would be entertaining to send him the article from Father Peter Daly with the subject, there had to be at least one who was a priest. But then I realized I should probably read the article before I sent it to him. So I did, and it was incredibly moving. It was incredibly moving. It was written by a 72-year-old retired Roman Catholic priest, Peter Daly, and he was caring for a friend of his, Jose Luis, who had stomach cancer. Came down with stomach cancer in October of 2020, and his friend died in March of this year. In between, Father Peter Daly cared for him, and I'm not talking about praying for him and making sure the parish brought him meals or visited him occasionally. Jose came to live with him. He couldn't be alone. In his own words, Jose lived on the third floor of a walk-up building in Washington, D.C. for 28 years. In the 4 years that I had known him, I had often seen him take the stairs 2 at a time, all the way to the third floor. But this time he moved very slowly up the stairs. He collapsed on the second floor landing, completely out of breath. I sat down on the floor with him and put my arms around him. I said, Jose, you can't live here by yourself anymore. You have to come home with me. A couple weeks later, on December 8th, I moved him to the guest room in my house with just some clothing, a few personal items, and a huge stack of books. Jose never went anywhere without a book. He was constantly reading in English and Spanish. From Thanksgiving of 2020 until his death at the end of March in 2022, right before Easter, I was Jose's caregiver, roommate, and support system. It was the most intense period of love and loss in my life. It was a huge blessing. He continues, 2 things I want to say at the outset. First, Jose was a gay man. So am I. But we were not sexually involved. Our love was emotional and spiritual, not sexual. But nonetheless, it was real love. In the course of our 16 months together, our relationship grew in intensity and complexity. He writes, as a priest, I have often yearned for intimacy. We tell everyone God is love. We tell people that the whole point of life is to love. But we seldom know the power and beauty and pain of love. Loving a group of parishioners is not the same as loving one other person. For me as a priest, my friendship with Jose Luis was the deepest and richest experience of love that I have ever had in my life. I think that is something that most priests yearn for. Second, Jose was a true and sincere seeker of spiritual truth. Like many gay people, he was wounded and rejected by the Catholic Church. He was raised a Catholic in his native Puerto Rico, but in recent years he had rejected the Church because he felt rejected by it. So there's this powerful story of this priest at 72 years of age, realizing this intense love, giving, leading to receiving. A few more vignettes. He writes, "Someday the Catholic Church will realize that it is wrong about same-sex love, which can be no less meaningful or Christian than heterosexual love." Why did I write all this, he writes? First, to pay tribute to my friend Louise. He deserves to be remembered. Second, I feel the need to be honest about myself. In my 72nd year, I need to live with integrity. If not now, when? I have lived the life that the church has asked of me. I always took my vow of celibacy seriously, and I always endeavored to live a chaste life. I was not breaking my commitments behind the scenes, but I have changed in the last 40 years. So has the church, so has the world. People now value honesty and authenticity. I am not the only priest with these struggles. People value honesty and authenticity. Isn't that what Jesus is talking about in today's gospel, this powerful moment? A woman with some spinal ailment that has caused her to be bent over for years is cared for by Jesus. Jesus lays his hands on her. It says she is free from her ailment, and she stands tall. She straightens up. She rises up, steadfast. And then Jesus, as we heard, is attacked by the religious authorities for working, for healing on the Sabbath, a day of rest. And he responds powerfully and sincerely. It's interesting in the prayer today, the collect in which we began the service, we talk about both mercy and power as being holy things. Mercy and power leading to glory, leading to healing, leading to good. Jesus had no mercy when it comes to religious authorities telling the truth. He calls them hypocrites, pointing out that they too, obviously, on the Sabbath day have to do things that are necessary and natural. But he says, why not heal on the Sabbath? Why not address suffering? Why not have compassion for someone in the moment? Is not this more important than not doing anything to remember God, if God is a God of mercy? So we could say Jesus is illuminating the difference between hypocrisy and integrity. Hypocrisy, from the Latin, literally meaning play acting, a pretense of having a virtuous character. Integrity, on the other hand, is soundness of moral character, honesty. Literally, the word is related to the word integer, one, whole, consistent unto itself. In our parish theme this year, we talk about being rooted in the core of our Christian tradition, and we use the words integrity and stability and steadfast, so that we can rise up, rooted and rising. The more steadfast we are, the more we will rise to the challenge of following Jesus and helping others and ourselves to be healed. Like the woman who, after years of being bent down, rises up as a person who in that moment miraculously realizes what it means to have faith, what it means to trust in a dramatic way. And we know in that definition of hypocrisy, of play acting, that in a sense we can say that we all engage in that to a degree, right? Just to be polite. It's a part of our cultural tradition. I mean, it would be crazy if we walked around totally transparent, wouldn't it be? If we shared every thought and every emotion that we have. But we have to learn to do so in a way that heals, in a way that speaks truth to power, in a way that transforms, so that the negative can become positive. The reality is that life as humans is conflicted, and sometimes we definitely need to find days of rest and leisure and Sabbath so that we are prepared for the reality around us, the ongoing reality for us. As Christians, based on Jesus' behavior and teaching, we are called not to avoid conflict, but to enter into it in order to transform it, in order to heal, to enter into, to speak truth to any power, from religious authorities to civil authorities to Uncle Chuck, anyone who needs to hear truth from our heart, but to do so not divisively, but in a way that brings healing. Jesus teaches us not to fall prey to religiosity, pious words uttered with hardened hearts. Rabbi Shea Held, dean of the Hadar Institute in New York, writes this: "So much of human religiosity comes down to a hoax we try to perpetrate on God. We'll give you worship," we say in effect, "and you just mind your own business. Your place is the church, the synagogue, the mosque, but out of our workplaces and our voting stations. You're the God of religion, not politics and economics." And God laughs. If you want to worship me, God says, you're going to have to learn to care about what I care about and who. And as the Bible never tires of telling us, God cares about the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, the poor, the oppressed, and the downtrodden. If those people don't matter to us, then God doesn't really matter to us either. That's the message of the prophets. If you're like me, you often feel like you're not doing enough. During this month of August and returning last week home to the parish, I've walked through the parish hall during the day and seen the empty beds of our houseless guests and their things gathered that they return to each night to sleep and have dinner prepared by you. And I'm grateful. Grateful that that space is in line with the prophets. But it's never enough, right? But it's something. It's something. And if we engage with our neighbor, if we engage with the other, that something leads to something more. I think Jesus wanted and wants us to hang in there, to stay where the pain is, in the words of Richard Rohr. Quote, "Jesus on the cross and Mary standing near him are powerful witnesses to transformative spirituality. They return no hostility, hatred, accusations, or malice directed at them. They hold the suffering until it becomes resurrection." That's the core mystery of Christianity. It often takes our whole lives to begin to comprehend this. They hold the suffering until it becomes resurrection. Friends, we can't control or fix or even understand all the pain of the world. Rohr says that the ego insists on understanding. But Jesus praises a certain quality even more than love, and he calls it faith. That is the ability to keep standing, keep rising up in the liminal places, in between understanding and confusion, in between the contrariness and the opposing forces, the tribalistic camps, to stand there with eyes and ears open until we are moved by grace to a much deeper level, a much larger frame. When we realize our pain is not just our own, we have the choice to respond authentically, not playing at following Jesus, but standing steadfastly. And we can respond with honesty and mercy, with truth and compassion. May we do so. May we support each other in doing so when we're having difficult days and help each other. And I want to end today with some quotes that speak to some of these themes from Frederick Buechner, the wonderful, amazing writer and theologian who died on Monday at the age of 96. I want to invite Nikki to help me with some of these quotes. So just consider this a little meditation at the end of the sermon, if you wish to close your eyes, carrying on the core truth from one of our Christian writers and theologians and mystics. You do not need to understand healing to be healed, or know anything about blessing to be blessed.
Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace.
Even the saddest things can become, once we have made peace with them, a source of wisdom and strength.
You have to suffer in order to be beautiful.
Compassion is sometimes the fatal capacity for feeling what it is like to live in somebody else's skin.
Laugh till you weep. Weep till there's nothing left but to laugh at your weeping. In the end, it's all one.
I not only have my secrets, I am my secrets, and you are yours.
The life I touch for good or ill will touch another life, and in turn another, until who knows where the trembling stops or in what far place my touch will be felt.
A miracle is when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. A miracle is when 1 + 1 equals 1,000.
Of the 7 deadly sins, anger is possibly the most fun.
The trouble with really seeing and really hearing is that then we really have to do something about what we have seen and heard.
Beneath our clothes, our reputations, our pretensions, beneath our religion or lack of it, we are all vulnerable both to the storm without and to the storm within.
Maybe the truth of it is that it's too good not to be true.
If our pain doesn't destroy us, it just might transform us into truly human beings at last.
Of all powers, love is the most powerful and the most powerless.
The pride that keeps us from forgiving is the same pride which keeps us from accepting forgiveness.
Here is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid.
The birth of Jesus made possible not just a new way of understanding life, but a new way of living it.
And the last quote, disbelief is as much of a choice as belief is. In the name of Christ, amen.